Once upon a time, in a kingdom known as the Kingdom of Delhi, there thrived a remarkable civilization situated along a bustling port frequented by grand ships. Merchants and travelers flocked to this kingdom to acquire its renowned perfumes, spices, and exquisite fabrics, making it famous far and wide. The streets of the kingdom were a sight to behold, adorned with trees and vibrant flowers. The balconies of every home were painted in cheerful shades of white and blue, creating a picturesque view. While most of the population engaged in trade, a portion of the community struggled in poverty, with some working as porters and others toiling in merchant shops for meager wages. In a narrow alley on Saffron Street stood a small hut, constructed from weathered wooden planks, riddled with weevils and lacking glass in its windows. Inside lived a delicate girl named Sapna, who attempted to shield her home from prying eyes by hanging tattered pieces of cloth over the windows. Unfortunately, these makeshift coverings did little to protect her from the scorching sun or the biting cold of the night. With long black hair and large brown eyes, Sapna was undeniably beautiful. The hut consisted of a single room, furnished only with a small wood stove, an old pillow resting on a piece of cloth that served as her bed, a small table, and a chair. These simple items were all that belonged to the 17-year-old girl, whose mother had died giving birth to her and whose father had passed away 10 years later. He had worked as a humble porter, earning just enough at the end of each long day to buy a piece of bread and a small piece of cheese. Despite their struggles, Sapna felt immense joy whenever her father returned home with food. However, that happiness was fleeting as her father's death left her alone and unsupported. In the early days following his passing, kind neighbors offered her food, but as time wore on, they gradually forgot her. At just 10 years old, she found herself begging on the streets of the kingdom to survive. Narayan told him, "For almost 20 years, I was a slave next to King Raj's palace, and I was the closest slave to his wife Sanjana, who did not even hide anything from me. One day, the army of the Red Mountain Kingdom attacked the kingdom, and the army of the enemy kingdom advanced towards the palace. That night, I saw Queen Sanjana wearing a necklace of emeralds, precious stones, and a rare moonstone, and she entered a secret room with its door hidden in a wall, and when the queen left that secret room, she did not have the necklace with her. And I saw her pulling the bronze horse statue, hanging on the wall after leaving the secret room. Then the secret door was closed, and that night, I met Queen Sanjana, who died at the hands of the invaders who almost killed King Raj that night, if not for the courage of the commander of the guard and his soldiers. After that, our army won the war, and the remaining soldiers of the hostile kingdom were expelled from our kingdom. After the war ended, the king was deeply saddened for the queen and expelled me and the rest of the palace district. A year later, the king died, and because he had no children, his brother, King Mahesh, took over the country, and I am convinced that King Mahesh has a problem with this secret room." So Sapna said to him, "What a strange story, Narayan, but this is a story that no one knows except me, and if I can enter the palace and get this priceless necklace, we will sell it for a large sum. Then we will bid farewell to poverty and buy a large palace in which we will live together like a mother and daughter." Then Sapna smiled at her with a smile of one who is possessed by doubt, and then she said to her, "How will I enter the king's palace, and how will I know the way? The queen's chamber?" Narayan said to her, "Do not worry. I have thought of everything and prepared a precise plan. I also know by heart every place in the palace. I will tell you everything I know about the palace and the location of the queen's chamber." Sapna smiled sarcastically and said to the old woman, "That means that you did not bring me to your house because you felt sorry for me, but rather to carry out your plan that you had prepared before." Narayan replied kindly, Who is more worthy than you to enjoy with me the huge sums of money that we will get after the sale of Queen Sanjana's necklace?" Thus, determination appeared on Sapna's face. She said to the old woman, "Tell me about your plan," and she was all ears. Narayan told her that King Mahesh recently got married, and I heard from reliable sources in the palace. He was looking for a beautiful young slave girl to be the companion of his new wife, as she is young and comes from a distant kingdom. Therefore, she is lonely and needs a girl of her age who will be his obedient slave and companion to spend time with in the palace. The first thing I must do is to apply to the palace as the head of slave affairs. The first thing you must do is apply to the palace as the head of slave affairs and show tact, good manners, and culture. I am sure he will choose you from dozens of girls who will apply for the honor of this palace position. Then Narayan entered her room and disappeared for a while. When she came out, she was carrying an old-fashioned box. She placed it in front of Sapna. "What is this box?" Sapna asked. Narayan opened the box and took out a beautiful dress made of pink velvet and a pair of thin silver shoes. "This dress and shoes are for you, bought with all the money I have saved." Sapna grabbed the dress and put it against her body. Then she smiled sincerely and said, "It fits me perfectly." She put on the shoes and marveled at the fit. "How did you know my shoe size? And how did you choose a dress that fits me so well without taking my measurements?" Narayan replied, "I was the slave of the most famous queen of all time. This gave me the experience to know the appropriate clothes for each girl just by looking at her." Sapna said, "You are a cunning old woman." Narayan laughed proudly. The next day, Narayan taught Sapna the proper manner of speaking and some principles for dealing with the queen. After 7 days of training, on the morning of the 8th day, Sapna put on the dress and shoes Narayan had bought for her. She walked towards the palace, replaying everything she had learned in her mind. Sapna felt tense and anxious, but she gathered her courage and walked confidently towards the palace gate. The gatekeeper allowed her to enter. Sapna began to gaze at the beautiful roses and the water fountain in the palace garden. The fountain, made of white porcelain in the shape of a sea dolphin, filled a large circular basin of water. Inside, ornamental fish swam. Jasmine flowers and violets surrounded the fountain, and nearby was a wall of short trees, trimmed to depict wild animals. Bianca, the palace headmistress, cut off the girl's reverie and said sternly, "Follow me." Sapna followed in complete silence and respect. They entered a large hall filled with beautiful girls. When Sapna saw them, she felt frustrated because of their breathtaking beauty. Bianca stood in front of the girls and said, "Today, the queen's personal companion will be chosen, and I will test you one by one." The girls started to worry. Bianca left the room, and the guards started calling girls one by one. As time went by, Sapna felt more tension and anxiety. After 3 hours, only Sapna remained. Bianca entered the room and looked at Sapna closely. "Is your name Sapna?" she asked. Sapna replied firmly, "Yes, madam." Bianca asked her how she would act if the queen felt bad one day. Sapna said, "I would tell her about a strong queen in an ancient kingdom who is able to help her king thanks to her personality. I would tell her that she is stronger than this queen and, with patience, endurance, and the people's love, she can help our king." Bianca began to admire her. "What would you do if our queen asked you one day to put one of her priceless jewels in the safe in her room?" Sapna told her, "I will carefully inspect the place to make sure that no one has heard the queen's conversation with me. Then I will take the jewel, enter her room, and put it in the royal closet and close it tightly. Then I will leave the room quietly." Bianca told her, "That's good." Then she told her, "Our queen is now visiting another kingdom, and she will return in 10 days to this one. In the meantime, you'll be trained in the principles of your new profession." Then she called one of the palace maids and told her to spray her room. The maid did as she was asked. That evening, Sabna lay on a comfortable mattress in a room twice the size of the hut she lived in, and all around her showed beauty and sophistication. The walls were painted a deep purple color, and the floor of the room was covered with luxurious Persian carpets. In one corner of the room, there was an elegant table on which stood a teapot, and next to it were a silver cup and a bottle. And then she remembered the warning that Narayan had given her, that if she did not receive the necklace within 2 days of her arrival in the village, she would reveal the matter to the king and his wife. Sabna got up from her bed, then walked towards the door of the room with hurried steps. She opened the door to her room and began to look right and left, and when she was sure that the path ahead was clear, she left her room and then walked briskly towards the royal suite. In the queen's room, she opened the door slowly and quickly entered, closing the door behind her. When she saw the queen's room, her eyes widened in amazement at the sophistication and luxury that surrounded it. The grand windows were adorned with beautiful silk curtains, and a large 8-armed golden candelabra stood at the center of a gleaming white marble table. Hanging from the ceiling was an enormous chandelier whose light captivated the eye. Sabina gazed around the royal chamber until a bronze statue of an Arabian stallion on one of the walls caught her attention. She approached it and moved it, causing a hidden door in the wall to open. Though fearful, Sabina steadied herself and entered the secret room. Inside, she found a marble column topped with a blue velvet cushion. Resting upon this cushion was a royal necklace encrusted with emeralds, rubies, and coral, centered by rare blue moonstones, the only one of its kind in all the kingdoms. A clear glass case protected the priceless treasure. Sabina lifted the glass cover, took the necklace, and replaced the cover before exiting the room. She moved the bronze statue back to its original position, closing the secret door. Concealing the necklace in her dress, Sabina cautiously left the chamber. Once back in her own room, she took out the necklace and gazed upon it. Remembering her father's words from her dream, Sabina's face took on a determined expression. She had made a decision that would change her fate entirely. The next morning, Sabina requested an audience with the king, claiming she had important news that could save the kingdom. Bienchal allowed her to meet with the monarch. In the royal hall, Sapna greeted the king and told him she was the daughter of a poor porter. She had come bearing a great treasure that belonged to the people of Delhi and asked that he sell it and use the proceeds to care for his subjects, promising there would be no more poor or beggars in the kingdom. Impressed by her character, the king agreed on the condition that she not lie to him. Sapna recounted the entire story, and the king marveled at the necklace's beauty. He smiled at Sapna and asked why she did not simply steal the treasure and flee. Sabina replied that if she were a thief, she would not have begged people for food, for though poor, her father had raised her with noble principles, which she still held dear. The king told Sabina to ask anything of him, and he would grant it. She asked that he keep his promise to distribute the necklace's sale proceeds to his people, ensuring no one was poor or in need, and to pardon Narayan. She also requested he spread justice and equality throughout the land, for a just society is the true army and protector of a kingdom. The king smiled admiringly and appointed Sabina as his royal advisor from that day forward. The next morning, the king showered his people with wealth, abolishing taxes and having his soldiers distribute money to the poor. He granted Narayan a large sum to buy a house and farm, and justice and equality reigned in the kingdom. Sapna spent her life serving the king, her wise counsel and loyalty protecting the realm from many dangers. One night after a long, tiring day, Sapna fell into a deep sleep. In her dream, her father appeared and said, "Well done, my daughter. You used your intelligence and virtue to serve the people, and now there are no more poor or needy. I am so proud of you, my dear child." Sapna smiled, and for the first time, she fell into a deep, comfortable sleep. If you do not follow Phoenix channel, you will probably never see us again. But if you do, congratulations, you are on the path to continued growth.